The sound of hooves pounding against dry earth punctuated the still Dakota Territory air as Tabitha Blackburn clutched her swollen belly, tears streaming down her dirt-smudged face. It was 1876, and the promise of a new life in Deadwood had crumbled beneath the cruel reality of a husband who'd gambled away everything they owned, including her. "Please," she whispered, though no one was there to hear her pleas. "Madam, you can't stay out here all night again," said McGregor, a balding man with tobacco-stained teeth. "Mr. Collins will be here tomorrow to collect his property." He couldn't quite look her in the eye as he said it. "I'm a person," Tabitha said, her voice barely audible. "Not property." McGregor shrugged uncomfortably. "Ain't my business. Your husband made the deal fair and square." "There's nothing fair about it," she said, placing a protective hand over her belly. As dusk approached, the distant sound of hoofbeats made Tabitha's heart race with fear. Was Collins coming early? She stood shakily, considering whether to run, though she knew she wouldn't get far in her condition. The rider who appeared was not Collins, but a lean cowboy astride a magnificent chestnut stallion. He dismounted with the fluid grace of a man who'd spent most of his life in the saddle. His face was partly obscured by the brim of his hat, but when he lifted his head, Tabitha was struck by eyes as blue as the Dakota sky. "Xavier Kane." He introduced himself with a tip of his hat. "Looking for supplies and maybe a meal before I head north to my claim." McGregor emerged from his store, wiping his hands on his apron. "Got supplies, but no food prepared. Heading to Deadwood, Mr. Kane. Got a small spread 'bout 30 miles north of here," Xavier replied. Then his gaze fell on Tabitha. Something in his expression shifted. Not pity, she realized, but a flicker of concern. "Evening, madam." Tabitha nodded cautiously, years of living with Jacob having taught her to be wary of strange men. McGregor cleared his throat. "She ain't for conversation, Kane. She's spoken for. Collins is coming tomorrow to collect." Xavier's brow furrowed. $40 due tomorrow?" McGregor replied, looking uneasy at the cowboy's obvious anger. Xavier reached into his vest and pulled out a small leather pouch. "Then I'll give everything for her," he said, his voice steady and clear in the evening air. He emptied the contents onto McGregor's palm coins and a gold pocket watch. "That's $60 and my father's watch. Worth more than any horse Collins has ever owned." McGregor stared at the payment, then back at Xavier. "You ain't making sense, boy. You don't even know her." "I know enough," Xavier said. "No woman should be traded like cattle, especially not one with child." He looked at Tabitha. "Madam, I'm not looking to own you. I'm offering you freedom and safe passage to wherever you want to go." Tabitha stared at him, searching for deceit in his eyes and finding none. "Why would you help me?" "Because it's the right thing to do," he answered simply. McGregor hesitated, fingering the coins. "Collins won't be happy." "Collins can take it up with me," Xavier replied, his hand resting casually near his holstered revolver. Tabitha rose to her feet, one hand on her belly. "I have nowhere to go," she admitted. "Jacob took everything. I've got a small cabin on my claim. It's not much, but there's a spare room where you could stay until you figure out what's next," Xavier offered. "No strings attached, madam. You have my word." Hope flickered in Tabitha for the first time in days. The alternative was a life with Collins, a man known for his cruelty, especially to those he considered his property. "Why should I trust you?" she asked, needing to hear his answer. Xavier removed his hat, revealing sandy hair and a face weathered by sun and wind, but his eyes remained kind. "My mother raised me to believe that a man is measured by how he treats those who can do nothing for him. I'm offering help because you need it, not because I expect anything in return." McGregor huffed impatiently. Make up your mind, woman. I need to close up shop. Tabitha looked from McGregor to Xavier, weighing her limited options. I accept your help, Mr. Kane, she said finally, straightening her shoulders despite her fear. Thank you. When I found out about the baby, I thought he might change. Instead, he saw it as another way to place a bet. They rode in silence after that, each lost in their own thoughts as the sky darkened to deep purple. Stars began to appear, brilliant against the vast Dakota sky. In the distance, Tabitha could make out the silhouette of a small cabin nestled among a stand of cottonwood trees. Home, Xavier said, a hint of pride in his voice. As they approached, Tabitha could see it was indeed small but well built. It's not much, Xavier said, lighting a lamp, but it's dry and warm. It's wonderful, Tabitha replied honestly, overcome with relief at finding herself in a safe place. Xavier showed her where he kept supplies, helped her fill a basin with water to wash, and then excused himself to care for the horses. When he returned, he brought fresh milk from a cow she hadn't yet seen and set about making a simple meal of beans, bacon, and biscuits left from his morning cooking. They ate in companionable silence, Tabitha nearly dizzy with the novelty of a peaceful meal without fear of a sudden outburst or violence. Thank you, she said when they'd finished. For everything. Xavier nodded. Get some rest, Mrs. Blackburn. Tomorrow will be soon enough to figure out what comes next. Tabitha, she corrected him. Please, call me Tabitha. Tabitha, he repeated softly. Good night. In the days that followed, Tabitha and Xavier established a tentative rhythm. Tabitha's hands trembled as she opened the letter. Jacob's dead, she whispered after reading it. Got into a fight in a saloon in Bismarck. Stabbed. Xavier set down the supplies. I'm sorry for your loss. Tabitha shook her head slowly. I'm not sure what I feel. Relief mostly, and anger that after everything he's just gone. She looked up at Xavier. Does that make me a terrible person? No, Xavier said firmly. It makes you human. That night, Tabitha cried for the first time since arriving at Xavier's cabin, not for Jacob, but for the years wasted, for the dreams she'd once had, and for the uncertainty that still lay ahead. As summer progressed into early autumn, Tabitha's pregnancy became more pronounced. Xavier insisted on riding to Jamestown to fetch the midwife, Martha Caldwell, to examine her. Everything looks to be progressing normally, Martha assured them after her examination. But I'd like to check on you again in a month, dear. That baby's going to come around November, by my reckoning. After Martha left, Xavier seemed unusually quiet as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. What will you do after? He asked finally. After the baby comes? Tabitha had been pondering this question herself. I don't know, she admitted. I have an aunt in St. Louis who might take me in, but... She trailed off. But? Xavier prompted gently. I've grown fond of this place, she said, gesturing to the land around them. The cottonwoods were turning golden, and the evening air carried the crisp scent of autumn, of the quiet, of knowing I'm safe. Xavier nodded, his expression thoughtful. You're welcome to stay as long as you need, he said. The cabin's small, but we could add on. A proper room for you and the little one. Tabitha felt something flutter in her chest that had nothing to do with the baby. That's generous of you. It's not generosity, Xavier said, meeting her eyes. Truth is, I've grown used to having you here. The cabin feels like a home again, not just a place to sleep. The admission hung in the air between them, meaningful but not overwhelming. But in Jacob's mind, I was his to trade. You're nobody's property, Xavier said firmly. Not his, not Colin's, not mine. I know that now, she replied softly. Being here, being treated like a person with choices. It's shown me what I should have known all along. As her due date approached, Xavier's protective instincts intensified. He built a cradle from pine boards, lined it with soft fabric, and positioned it near the fireplace to keep the coming baby warm. He made more frequent trips to Jamestown, stocking up on supplies and checking in with Martha the midwife. The horse scrambled up, seemingly unharmed, but Xavier couldn't stand. Pain lanced through his left leg, and he knew immediately it was broken. "Easy, boy," he soothed the nervous horse, managing to pull himself up using the saddle for support. He couldn't ride properly, but he could drape himself over Thunder's back. "Get us home." The intelligent horse seemed to understand, picking his way carefully through the storm. By the time the cabin came into view, Xavier was half frozen and light-headed from pain. Inside, Tabitha had been pacing anxiously, worried about Xavier's unusually long absence. When she heard Thunder's whinny outside, she rushed to the door, gasping at the sight of Xavier hanging limply across the saddle. "Xavier!" she cried, wading through the snow to reach him. "Broke my leg," he managed through gritted teeth. Creek crossing. With strength born of desperation, Tabitha helped him inside, supporting his weight despite her advanced pregnancy. She settled him on the bed, removed his snow-covered clothing, and assessed the injury. Tabitha stayed by his side, cooling his forehead with damp cloths, making sure he drank water, and speaking soothingly when the pain made him restless. In his fevered state, Xavier spoke more openly than he might have otherwise. "Should have told you," he murmured as Tabitha bathed his face with cool water. "Told me what?" she asked, leaning closer to hear him. "That I love you," he said, his blue eyes finding hers with startling clarity despite the fever. "Didn't want to pressure you. You've been through so much." Tabitha's breath caught in her throat. "I know the timing's all wrong, with your husband only recently gone, and the baby coming, and now me laid up like this." "Xavier," Tabitha interrupted gently. "The timing may not be perfect, but my feelings are clear. I love you too." Her voice softened. "You showed me what it means to be valued, to be respected. You gave everything for me when you didn't even know me." "Best trade I ever made," Xavier said, squeezing her hand. Their moment was interrupted by Tabitha suddenly gasping, her hand flying to her belly. "Oh, what is it?" Xavier asked, alarmed. "The baby," she said, her eyes wide. I think it's coming." Xavier struggled to sit up. "Now? But it's too early. Only by a week or so," Tabitha said, breathing through another pain. "Babies come when they're ready." Panic flooded Xavier's mind. He was bedridden with a broken leg, the nearest help miles away, and a blizzard still raging outside. "What do we do?" Tabitha's face was a mixture of fear and determination. "We deliver this baby. Together." The next 12 hours tested them both to their limits. Xavier dragged himself to the edge of the bed, leg throbbing with every movement, to help Tabitha as best he could. He heated water, tore clean sheets into strips, and offered encouragement as her labor progressed. "You're the strongest person I've ever known," he told her as she paced the small cabin between contractions. "I don't feel strong right now," she admitted, leaning against the table as another wave of pain washed over her. "That's how I know you are," Xavier replied. "You're afraid but doing what needs to be done anyway. That's true courage." Xavier watched them, overwhelmed by the fierce protective love he felt for both mother and child. "He's perfect," he said, gently touching the baby's tiny hand with his finger. "What Jacob would have traded for half a horse," Tabitha said, a mixture of sadness and wonder in her voice. "Worth more than all the horses in Dakota Territory," Xavier replied firmly. As they gazed at the newborn, a sudden pounding at the door startled them. Xavier reached for his revolver, kept within reach since his injury. "Who's there?" he called out. "Martha Caldwell," came the muffled reply. "And Sheriff Taylor. We've been trying to reach you since the storm broke." Relief flooded through Xavier. "It's unlocked." Martha burst in, covered in snow, the sheriff close behind her. She took in the scene: Xavier with his splinted leg, Tabitha in bed with the newborn, and immediately shifted into professional mode. "Well, I see I'm late to the party," she said, removing her coat and warming her hands by the fire. "Let's have a look at this little miracle, and then we'll check on that leg, Mr. Kane." The next few hours passed in a blur as Martha examined both baby and mother, pronounced them healthy, then turned her attention to Xavier's injury, confirming that Tabitha had said it properly. "You're lucky," Martha told him. "It's a clean break. Should heal well if you stay off it." The sheriff helped Martha ready the cabin for the night, bringing in extra firewood and seeing to the animals in the barn. Before they left, promising to return in a few days, Martha pulled Xavier aside. "That woman and child need security," she said bluntly. "They've been through enough uncertainty." Xavier nodded. "I know. I plan to offer it if she'll have me." Martha smiled, patting his shoulder. "Good man." That night, as the storm finally subsided outside, a different kind of peace settled over the cabin. Tabitha dozed in the bed with her son nestled beside her, while Xavier kept watch from his chair, his splinted leg propped up on a stool. "We need to name him," Tabitha said softly, opening her eyes to find Xavier gazing at them. "What did you have in mind?" Xavier asked. Tabitha smiled. "I was thinking William after my father. William Xavier Blackburn." She paused. Unless, Xavier prompted. "Unless someday he might have a different last name," she said, her eyes meeting his with quiet hope. Xavier moved his chair closer, taking her hand in his. "Tabitha Blackburn, I know we haven't known each other long, but I love you more than I thought possible. You and William have become my family. If you'll have me, I'd be honored to give you both my name when you're ready." Tears filled Tabitha's eyes as she squeezed his hand. "We would be honored to accept." 3 months later, on a clear February morning in 1877, Tabitha Blackburn became Tabitha Kane in a small ceremony in the Jamestown church. Xavier, his leg healed but still using a cane, stood tall beside her, while Martha Caldwell held little William, now thriving at 3 months old. "Never thought I'd see the day," Sheriff Taylor remarked to Martha as they watched the couple exchange vows. "A woman sold for half a horse, now the happiest bride in the territory." "Just goes to show," Martha replied with a knowing smile. "Sometimes the worst trades lead to the best outcomes." As spring returned to the Dakota Territory, Xavier and Tabitha began expanding their cabin, adding 2 proper bedrooms and a larger kitchen. The small homestead flourished under their joint care, with Xavier teaching Tabitha about ranching while she introduced vegetable varieties from her childhood in Pennsylvania. William grew into a strong, curious toddler with his mother's golden hair and his adoptive father's blue eyes. Though Xavier was not his biological father, no one seeing them together could doubt the bond between them. On William's first birthday, Xavier presented Tabitha with a deed. "I registered the homestead in both our names," he explained as she read the document. "This land belongs to us equally." Tabitha looked up at him, her eyes shining. "Partners in everything." "Always," Xavier agreed, kissing her softly. "From the moment I said I'd give everything for you, I meant it. Not just money or possessions, but my heart, my life, my future." As they stood on their porch that evening, watching the sunset with William sleeping peacefully in Tabitha's arms, she reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. "If someone had told me a year ago that being sold for half a horse would lead to the greatest happiness I've ever known, I would have thought them mad," she said. Xavier wrapped his arm around her shoulders, drawing her close. Sometimes the true value of things isn't what we trade for them, but what we build together afterward. In the years that followed, their family grew. A daughter joined them in 1878, followed by twin boys in 1880. Their homestead expanded to include 160 acres, with a herd of cattle that earned them a reputation for quality across the territory. Xavier's fair dealings and Tabitha's warmth made their home a gathering place for neighbors and travelers alike. On their 5th wedding anniversary, as they sat on their expanded porch watching their children play in the yard, Xavier handed Tabitha a small wooden box. "What's this?" she asked, opening it to reveal a delicate gold locket. "Open it," Xavier encouraged. Inside was a tiny painting of their family on one side, and on the other, inscribed in small letters, "Worth everything." Tabitha's eyes filled with tears as Xavier fastened the locket around her neck. "From half a horse to everything," she murmured, leaning against his shoulder. "And worth every bit," Xavier replied, kissing the top of her head. "The best trade of my life." As the Dakota sunset painted the sky in brilliant golds and reds, Tabitha thought of how far they'd come from that day at McGregor's trading post. From desperation to abundance, from fear to security, from loneliness to a home filled with love and laughter. What had once been a story of humiliation, a pregnant woman sold for half a horse, had transformed into a testament to courage, compassion, and the healing power of true love. In Xavier's willingness to give everything for a stranger in need, they had both found everything they'd ever wanted but never dared to hope for. A partnership of equals, built on respect, strengthened through adversity, and sustained by unwavering love. And as night fell over their thriving homestead, bringing with it the first stars of evening, Tabitha knew with absolute certainty that some journeys, no matter how difficult their beginnings, lead exactly where they're meant to go.